Good day everyone. Today we are dealing with HTML forms. This is a very important topic because we will be using many web forms always for submitting online things about. So HTML forms is used to collect the user input and it's the most often sent to the server for processing. So normally what we are doing, we are using these forms to collect the user input, and it's most often sent to the server for processing. So this is actually the concept of form. So how we'll use this form inside our or as an HTML code or web form. So here we can see that form tag. This is actually the starting tag we use to create the HTML form. So whenever we need to create an HTML form inside or include an HTML form inside our page, what we can use, we can just write this tag and insert every element that we can use inside that. Okay, so this include different types of input elements such as text fields, what for in order to add some datas, check boxes to check out different between different options, radio button also. So everything inside the form tags, that means this is the form starting tag and also there will be a closing tag. So in between, what all things we write inside the tags, that will be called as the form data. So this is the basic concept of form. Form is nothing but it's used to collect the user input. We know that we normally use this forms for entering or getting the data about from the users or the needy who they want to fill that. So the next one is it is most often sent to the server for processing. That also we know. So here how we will define using this form tag. We'll use this form tag to create the HTML form. Then what all things will be inside this form tag? There will be input elements such as text fields to write this something within the characters and check boxes to check something, radio buttons to like many more elements inside this. So normally this HTML forms have got three attributes. That's the very important thing to be keep in mind every time we use a HTML form. Why? Because this is actually a dynamic page, so we always need to transfer the data that are entered by the user into another page by different means. So that should be defined clearly, then only we could get each of the data entered by these users in a perfect and consolidated format. So that's why this is very important to keep in mind or consider. That is form attributes. There are action, method and target. There are three form attributes. Always they are action, method and target. So what does this action suggest? Let's see. Action specifies the URL of the page to be called on submit. So once we filled all our details into a form and now we are going to submit it, and we normally do that. Then while submitting, what is happening is this. So in our code we are actually writing something to act when the user submit his form. So that is actually specified in the action attribute. So which specifies the URL of the page to be called on submit. That means so the user has filled everything that he knows about himself or about what he have to fill. So thus when he submit, these data should be gone to somewhere. So which page it should be gone is normally specified using this action. So this is the format, that is form is our first or starting tag. So we write that, and inside our form should be gone to, or our form data should be called on to this page when the user submits it. That is normally defined using action is equal to some page. So when the user submits or when he presses the submit button in the form, what will happen? This action will call the URL of the page that is mentioned inside its double quotes or it as its value. Got it? So the next one is method, which determines how form data will be submitted to the server. So already we decided to which form this form data or while submitting which page should be called on. That's already specified in the action, and this method specified how our form data should be delivered or should be submitted to the server. So there are two general methods. They are get and post. Once we can use get, then also we can also use this post, and any one of this can be used in the method equal to value. Got it? Why? Because it determines how. So this how makes the difference between these two. Got it? That is get. While using get as the method value, like method equal to get, what happened? It appends the form data into the URL. So whatever what all things were there in the form data, that things will be appended with the URL. So it will be a very lengthy thing when we go into the execute or when we run that file. Why? Because we can see that in our browser itself. The title, we can see that many set of a long chain of characters will be displayed there, and this is very difficult to catch it. But the thing is that since it is a very lengthy one, some servers has got this limit length of the URL. So in such cases, when these get is used as a method to transfer or submit the data to the server, sometimes this data portions or while this is normally sent to the server along with the URL. So sometimes that full portion will be or some portion of that will be terminated or will be removed. Why? Because of this limitation in the server. So at that cases, this is not a good method to be implemented. So why? That is, the data or form data is normally appended into the URL. So everything will be there as along with the URL that is normally gone to the server while we submit the submit button. Okay. So the next method is post. It appends the form data inside the body of the HTTP request. So that means what? Something or our form data is enclosed. It's not as just like along with the URL, it's just roughly sent. It's not like that. It is inside the body of the HTTP request. So that implies what? It is secure and safe there. So normally for sensitive data transfers, we use this post method. That is to be keep in mind. So always the question will be asked like, what is the main difference between get and post? So the thing is that by using this get method, this data will be appended along with the URL, whereas in post method, this data is inside the or appended inside the body of the HTTP request. So that is always enclosed inside this HTTP request. It cannot be easily find out what the form data is. So that is why this is used as a conventional method or most useful and productive method in HTML forms. So the next attribute of the form is target. Specifies name or key where to display the response that is received. So we know that now what we did, we have filled our form, and when we submit or when we press the submit button, it will decide or it will say that this data should be called on to a method.php or some file where it is set or where to be submitted, that should be called during this time, and then using which method, get or post, that means on an enclosed way or an open way, it will be sent. So, and where to display, so someone need to see all these things, what are like the responses from the users. If they want to see that responses, so that also we have to mention here. So for that we use this target attribute, which specifies the where to display the response that is received. So when we give some value, some even an HTML form or page here, that will be, that form elements or data will be displayed as such in the targeted file or page, wherever we have to show that or we have to monitor that. So this is all about the attributes of form. So when or always we are using dynamic forms, not static forms, because this is such a scenario that we are living. We are always doing everything online. So why? Because this is getting more important. Got it? So the thing is that form attributes are action, method and target. Action is to specify. Action will specify the URL of the page to be called on when submit. And method determines how these form data should be submitted to the server. And the target specifies to which or whom to receive this form data, or which page is there to receive this form data, that can be mentioned using this target attribute. So the next one, let's get into an example. So this is our example to have, or just a simple example to define or to create a HTML form. Okay, so normally we started with our starting tag and also our HTML tags, body. So inside body, we know that everything we have to display or to be displayed there in the web page, that should be done inside this body tag. So thus we started with the body, and inside we can see we have written an heading of H2 size, that is as HTML forms. So that's our web page heading or form heading. So here I have started with the form tag. So it says that here we are going to present a or prepare a form. So it has got three attributes. We already told that: action, target, method, or action, method, or target. So these are the three attributes. So let's see what all these things says here. Action is equal to, I mentioned some page to be called on when submit. So I used here is as a action page.php. So this is the page where I want to go when the submit button takes place or submit button clicks. Target is equal to blank. So I want to display my form data into a blank or into a new web page. Okay. So that's why I used blank. This target has also got many more values. We'll be discussing about everything in detail in our next video. So this is all about a very basic concept about the form. So this is the target value here for the target attribute of the form. The next attribute we know that is the method. Method I used here is get, because this is normally a simple example. We doesn't need to have to enclosure or to secure something. So thus I simply used get here. This is the default one. When we have to mention it as post, then you have only to mention method equal to post. If we didn't even write this will be, every form will be normally executed as a get method itself. Okay. So inside the form, I have to write something like first name. So my form has got a heading HTML forms. So I'm going to display a form with first name, second name and submit button. That's all. So this is a form which I'm going to design using these codes. So firstly, I've written my heading as HTML forms. Then I've written here as just as first name. So that is just displayed as such here. So then I am going to write input type is equal to text, name is equal to first name, max length is equal to 10. So what is the intention here is to create a text field, and I have to write my name here, my first name here. So I used to create a text field of name, first name, and its max length about 10. So likewise, my second name is already displayed here, and for that I used a text input type as text and name as second name and with a size about 10. So next I'm going to submit my form. This is all about the small form. So here we have to mention which type we are going to inputting into this form. That is, I'm going to input a type called submit and value equal to submit. So this value is always displayed as such in the inside that field or input type. So if it is a submit button, you have to mention that value, because then only the user can identify what this button or what this key for. Got it? So thus I closed my form, body and HTML all together. So here this is a simple example, have a form with HTML form as the heading in order to input the first name and the second name and submit button. So this is a simple example. So here let's see how this is normally defined as well. So input, this is an inline tag. Why? Because everything is written in the same line. So this is an inline tag. Most of the controls are specified using this element. So in the inside the form, most of the controls we can see different types of things we have used in this form. Everything is normally done using this input tag itself. That's why this input tag is most of the controls are specified using this input element. Okay, type is a mandatory attribute of the input tag. Specifies what type of the input, like text box or radio box. So we used here a text box. So for that we mentioned input type equal to text. That implies we are going to insert a text box into our form. Got it? So likewise, this type has good many more values. Don't worry, everything will be discussed in the next session. This is just an introduction, that's why we are consolidating it very simply. So the next I used here as the name. Name is another mandatory attribute except for the type equal to submit and type equal to reset. So we have seen that type equal to input having the type attribute, we haven't mentioned its name here. We just only done which type of the input is that and what is its value for, or for in the case of submit and reset. It doesn't need to add the name there. It only need to have which type and what is its value when we use or when we have to display the submit and reset buttons. Okay. So that is about this name, type, and let's see about this value. Value is a mandatory attribute for checkboxes and radio button. So it's very important to be kept in mind that checkboxes and radio button, when we have to implement these two things, we always have to mention which is its value. Like this is actually our submit is actually a button. So for writing this or for implementing this button, we have to add its value. So like that, if we are adding a checkbox, then we have to mention the value as what this checkbox have to display or what does this checkbox means. Okay. Then ID attribute is another attribute in the form. It is mainly used in the client side scripting. So let's see once again, that is type is a mandatory attribute for input. For any cases, if wherever we use this input, we have to mention which type of input is that. That is a mandatory field. We cannot exit it anywhere. So like that, name is another mandatory attribute for the type except in the case of submit and reset. For that cases, for like these kinds of radio button and checkboxes, we have to mention this value because there it comes the mandatory attribute. So here we have used this type. Type equal to text will define or is used to display a text box. So wherever we need a text box, we just need to write input type is equal to text box. So a text box is a type which I have to input into my form. So like that I have used another one here, size. So size is nothing but, and also I have given its value as 10 in quotes. So let's see what's that. Size is equal to, or size is to control the display width of the text box. So in which length, or sorry, in which width I want to display my text box, that should be mentioned using this size attribute. So the next one is max length. It's the one to specify the maximum length of the text box. So we have used that one also here, like type is a text, that means I have to use a text box with the name as the first name. Then max length is 10, so his first name should be there with the characters, about 10 characters or that much length. So this is all about this simple form, and in detailed description about each of these input types, different kinds of attributes, everything will be, or different ways like this, inserting checkbox, radio button, everything will be discussed in the next session.